obviously anybody can sue any other person for any reason.
Yeah.
It comes down to what can be proven. But the more airtight you draft a contract, the more contingencies that are thought about ahead of time. An ethics complaint was filed against me, alleging that I was getting paid county funds to do mediation work, and those are county funds that allegedly I budget and approve as part of the county budget process. We are, to our knowledge, the first school shooting that had 0 preventable deaths. Everybody who could be saved was saved. We used what's called a rescue task force model.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mind Your Own Business podcast. I'm here today with Alex Ward, attorney, got your own law practice.
Yes, sir.
Focusing mostly on business law, contracts, things like that, I understand.
That's correct.
Also a Barrow County Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
You also do some mediation work.
Do some mediation.
Awesome.
Do a little bit of all of the above. I've got some other side projects too we can possibly jump into, but yeah, got a number of different things that I work on.
Cool. So, and I think we went to the same law school, Georgia State Law,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And you graduated 2017?
2017.
And how long have you had your own law practice?
I was general counsel for a company that buys and sells semi-trailers, day cabs, yard mules, things like that. And then COVID hit, and COVID put a serious hurting in the transportation world. Yeah. So they scaled back significantly and ended up coming across a in-house counsel for a medical supply test kit company. And they were doing COVID test kits. And she said, I need outside counsel to help with contract reviews. So it provided the perfect opportunity for me to jump off and start doing my own thing. So I've been on my own fully since November of 2020.
And besides contract reviews, what else do you guys offer?
So the biggest thing is going to be contract reviews and negotiations, but also helping on the HR side of things. So many folks don't realize that employees can be your best asset, but they can also be one of your biggest liabilities. Even just so much as trying to be kind to somebody when you're separating that employment relationship can open the door for potential lawsuits. And so that's one of the things that we do is we'll come in and help with the termination process that, here's your script, here's everything that you should say and shouldn't say to make that as seamless as a process as possible, while also mitigating the risk of potential lawsuits.
So what is something that, for instance, a business owner shouldn't say when they're terminating somebody?
So I had one client that they were terminating an employee. I said, hey, what's the basis for termination? They said, well, he's been talking bad about the company, threatening to file lawsuits against the company, number of things along those lines. He'd already been written up previously in the year for that. I was like, perfect. That's our reason for termination. I drafted everything out, sent it to the owner an email, said, here's your talking points, here's everything you need to do. This employee, about a year and a half prior, had a heart attack, and he was still a bit overweight. And so instead of being confrontational, or the owner thought instead of being confrontational, he said, yeah, we worked out that, we agreed that it was best for us to separate ways amicably. And then I told him it would be a great opportunity to focus on his health. And that one little slogan saying, hey, this would be a great opportunity to focus on your health. He then was able to flip around and file an EEOC complaint for ADA discrimination. Fortunately, because we had the contemporaneous draftings of the document saying, hey, here's the basis for termination, and they had another employee who had a similar heart attack issue right around the same time and was not terminated, the EEOC complaint ended up getting dismissed, but it was a year and a half worth of battling just because the owner thought that he was being kind to this now former employee.
Yeah. So he basically said, go focus on your health, get better, take care of your medical issues.
Right.
So the advice to business owners would be, when you fire somebody, don't tell them to focus on their health. Don't tell them to focus on their diversity and their background.
Exactly.
Like
the key takeaway there is when you're terminating somebody, focus on the legitimate business reason for the termination And if they start asking additional questions, you want to just keep going back to that same talking point. I always tell them, obviously you want to give them enough so that they know that they, in fact, they did do something wrong, but you don't want to get into a back and forth debate with them. Stick to the same talking points. Here it is, and here's the factual. I always have them give the factual information as well about, if they've got health insurance, that they'll be contacted for COBRA coverage. I always tell them, go ahead and give them the information on unemployment and let them know that any unemployment decisions are made by the state unemployment office, but here's the contact information for that. And just go ahead and give that to them. And that way you've got other stuff you can just focus on. Just go A, B, C, D. We need all of your equipment back. We need keys, things like that. And then have them walked out of the building and just try to make it as straightforward as possible, but not focus on any personal matters.
Yeah. That's good advice. What are some other things that small business owners need to know to protect themselves legally?
So one of the biggest things that I'm seeing right now is an over-reliance on AI for business contracts. Business owners are thinking that, hey, I can use AI to shortcut or to save a little bit of money on drafting, and then they're still sending them to me to review, and I'm basically getting a document that's just got bullet points, and I can immediately look at them and say, hey, did you have this drafted by AI? Well, yeah, I thought it was a good start. It's good for an outline purpose, but that's one of the biggest concerns that I'm seeing right now, because AI is not going to consider, do I need limitations of liability clause in here? Do I need indemnification provisions? What do those indemnification provisions look like? And so having an attorney walk through those and draft those. And, at the end of the day, the drafting of contracts on the front end by an attorney is going to truly be a whole lot less expensive than missing something as critical as a limitation of liability clause and opening yourself up to significant lawsuits down the road. And for those who don't know, with the limitation of liability clause, we can limit the potential damages. So if you're selling a product, we can limit the damages in a limitation of liability clause to the fees that they paid you over the last 6 months or the last year. That becomes a position that we can negotiate with the other side. The other side might want higher damage potentials. But those are things that lawyers think about, that when you're putting it into AI saying, hey, draft me a contract because I'm selling 1,000 widgets to this company for $30,000, the AI is not taking into consideration.
Right. And if you get into litigation, it's going to cost you more. Even if you win, you're going to spend way more money than if you had just hired an attorney to do it right the first time.
Absolutely. And obviously anybody can sue any other person for any reason.
Yeah.
It comes down to what can be proven. But the more airtight you draft a contract, the more contingencies that are thought about ahead of time, the easier it is to work with the other side and say, hey, we've got a clear breach here. Here's the damages. Or even on my client's side, if we do have that limitation, my client's the one selling the widgets, and we do limit that to 6 months or to a year, the other side reaches out and says, hey, we have this claim against you. We can look at it and say, there's the potential, but damages are already limited. It's worth it to just go ahead and work with them on paying 6 months back to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're also doing some mediation work, I understand, right?
Yes.
And can you tell, for people that don't know, what is a mediator?
So,
what is the mediation process like?
Yeah, so a mediator, any mediator who does court-connected mediation is licensed through the Georgia Office of Dispute Resolution. And basically you take a 40-hour course, and then you have to do continuing education every year. And a mediator is a licensed neutral that helps the parties find a resolution to their dispute. They don't tell the parties that, hey, this person's right and this person's wrong and this person owes that person X amount of money. What the mediator's job is to help them look at their cases and say, hey, here's the things that you're going to have to prove. Here's where you might have some issues proving that. And for the other side, hey, here's the evidence that they've got against you. You're going to have some troubles disproving that and fighting against that. What can we do to maybe try to find a resolution that works for the parties? And just like having an airtight contract can help save on litigation costs, mediation can help save on litigation costs. It's a lot faster and a lot less expensive than a formal discovery process when you're in litigation. So mediators will come in and they will help both sides realize strengths and weaknesses and maybe try to find a resolution that they can live with versus the putting it at the mercy of the court or a jury to decide.
Yeah. And I like mediation for my personal injury cases because it gives my clients a chance to sort of control the outcome, right? If you take it to a jury, take it all the way, you give it to the jury's hands and they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you settle at mediation, you have some control. It may not be the best possible outcome, but you know that you controlled the outcome.
Correct.
You know, you got something that you could at least live with. Is usually a good chance to settle cases.
And the other thing that, especially when I'm doing mediation in like a magistrate court, where it's a lot of times parties that are not represented by attorneys, and you might have somebody that realizes, hey, maybe I didn't do right by the other side in this case, and maybe I do owe them some money, but I just can't pay them. One of the things that I can do as a mediator is I can help set up payment plans. And I tell the plaintiffs that as well, that, hey, if you were to take this in front of a judge and get a judgment, you still have to collect on that. Yeah. And the court's not going to just send a bill to the other side and have them stroke a check for you. You're going to have to figure out the collection mechanism. And so in a lot of cases, if you want to get that money, you need to be open to doing a payment plan with the other side. That's something that I can set up as part of a mediated agreement that we can then put into place so that it's something that works for both sides, that, hey, I'm going to get my money back and the other side's able to make right in a way that they're able to handle it.
That's good. And that's important for people to know, because I've often got clients that come and, they want to take something to court, especially in small claims court. Mm-hmm. But my advice is winning that case is usually easy. Collecting is hard, if not impossible sometimes.
One of my biggest complaints about law school is that they teach you all these classes. You can pick all these classes on and learn about all different areas of law and how to win based on the law in those areas. There's no law school that I know of teaching a class on how to collect on a judgment.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of times one of the most difficult areas of the law, is that I can get a judgment all day long, but if they don't have assets, it's about as useful and as valuable as the piece of paper that it's written on.
Yeah. Or they may have assets, but they may be good at hiding them and moving them around. Yeah. Good advice. You're also running for county commissioner, running for re-election.
How many
terms have you served so far?
So I am in my first full term. I served the last 9.5 months of my predecessor's term. He passed away in December of 2021. And so I've been, so I had a special election in March of 22, and then an election for the full term in May of 22 was the primary, and then November. So I'm in my first full term plus 9.5 months.
How's the campaign going right now? So
campaign right now is going really well. One of the things that I've tried to do as a commissioner is just be accessible. You get a lot of complaints that I'm not hearing from my commissioner. I don't know who they are. I can't get a hold of them. You also have a lot of Facebook pages where people post about their different complaints about what's going on in county government. And, well, how come this road hasn't been, there's a pothole on this road, and why isn't the county fixing that? We pay all these taxes. And it might just be that it's a state route and they don't know who to reach out to. And so one of the things that I've really tried to do over the 4 years that I've been in office is be as accessible as possible. Most folks just simply don't know. They don't have the information. and government does a terrible job of providing the information. So, so I tried to look for those posts where somebody says, "Hey, there's a pothole here." Okay, let's find out if it's county or state, what have you. If it's county, I'll go ahead and call Roads and Bridges, and they'll have it taken care of by the end of the day. If it's state, here's the contact. Here's the web form to fill out about a pothole on a state route. And one of the things that I've noticed in the 4 years that I've been in office is the number of people who, when somebody complains about something on a state route like Highway 81, the number of other people that immediately respond and say, "You can't blame the county for that. That's a state route." That has been a big change in just the 4 years that I've been in office.
Well, that's good that you're informing the county.
Yes.
What are some other things that you think people don't understand correctly about county politics and the county government?
Absolutely. So what I tell folks is one of the most difficult issues for us to deal with is rezoning, because rezoning is probably the one issue that you almost always have competing interest on both sides of the issue. Nobody really cares when we're approving accepting $75,000 from the state for accountability courts, but everybody cares when 100 acres is getting rezoned for a neighborhood. And the biggest thing that I tell folks is that two things we have to keep in mind. One is private property rights. At the end of the day, if I had the money to buy up every large piece of green space left in Barrow County, I would do it in a heartbeat and keep it as green space. I don't have that money. But those folks, maybe one day. But unfortunately, the farmers have passed on, and it's in the hands of their kids or grandkids who don't want it as farmland anymore, and they are entitled to have to the best value return for their property.
Right.
At the same time, we want to try to keep in mind the concerns and needs of the residents who are already in Barrow County and the community. And so it's trying to find that balance. And so if our comprehensive plan is what really drives the growth vision, and we have to redo the comprehensive plan every 5 years, we get feedback from the community. And so I always tell folks that's the opportunity to say, hey, we want to see less growth in this area. We're okay with seeing some more growth, and especially some commercial and industrial in this area. Here's what we don't really want to see here. And that's the opportunity to guide that growth. But what I have done as a commissioner is looked at conditions. So it's hard for me to say no. It's a lot easier for me to say yes, but. So bring to me the specific concerns that you have so that I can add in conditions and say yes, but. A perfect example of this is in our ordinance, when you have two different land uses that are going in side by side, there's buffer requirements. Well, the buffers can be reduced in half by the use of a 4-foot high earthen berm plus an 8-foot fence or a 12-foot fence. I'll add conditions that prohibits the reduction of the zoning buffer even with those fences in place. And I'll also include that that zoning buffer must be a vegetative screened zoning buffer. So doing those types of things helps to improve the quality between the developments, what's coming in versus what's already there, while also respecting that private property rights. Another example is there's been a lot of concern about the overuse of rentals, especially built-to-rent communities where the entire community is built as single family, all rental. We also had, it's tapered off a little bit with the increase in interest rates, but for a while we had a lot of houses that when they would go up for sale, you'd have these large investment companies come in, pay over asking price, box out people who were trying to become first-time home buyers, turn these homes into permanent rental homes, while also essentially creating a permanent renter class. And so I've added, as we've had rezones for new developments, I've added conditions that have required the restrictive covenants to include a cap on the number of rentals to be enforced by the HOA. So that way it limits some of that so that we're keeping some quality growth that, reflecting or recognizing that growth is going to happen what do we do to improve the quality of that growth?
That's a really important issue, right? So housing and rentals, what else can the county do at the county level to sort of curb these institutional buyers from buying up so many houses and renting them out? Like, I think BlackRock is one of them that you hear in the news.
Yep. So there's not much more that we can do at the county level. And even we could not do just a blanket. You can't rent more than 15% of the homes can't be rentals. We have to do it through restrictive covenants enforced by the HOA. There has been some proposed legislation actually at the federal level, I believe in the Senate, that's received some bipartisan support. Not sure where it's at right now, but at the local level, there's not much more we can do beyond for these newer developments, adding in those restrictions. Now, certainly existing HOAs can look at updating their HOA bylaws to include those restrictions potentially as well. But that's sort of our limits right there on that right now.
What made you first want to run to be a county commissioner? And the follow-up question is, how have you liked your 1.5 terms so far?
So what made me want to do it is I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. Now, I've always had an interest in politics. Growing up, I rode with my dad the entire summer from 7th to 8th grade year. He did commercial HVAC, and he always had talk radio on. So it was Neil Bortz in the morning, Rush Limbaugh midday, and then the Kimmer in the afternoon. And so I started developing a real interest for politics. As I started seeing a lot of rezones around me, even then, before I even had a consideration for running for office, I recognized that they're not going to just deny them, but what can I do to push for, hey, I've got an issue with what they're proposing right now. And so I started going to some of our commission meetings and speaking out. And I knew that when my commissioner no longer wanted to run, I was interested in hopping in. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, he did pass away before the end of his last term. But that presented an opportunity for me to go ahead and say, all right, yeah, this is definitely something I want to jump into. As far as how I've enjoyed it, for the most part, it's been an adventure, but I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the opportunities to get out and meet folks and talk to people and just be a sounding board. A lot of times folks just want somebody to listen and take their concerns seriously. Even if I'm not ultimately able to get them the resolution that they want, just them knowing that somebody is pushing the issue and doing what they can to try to find a resolution, you see folks light up from that and recognize that they are a valued part of the community. And so I've really enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed that aspect of being able to just try to help people.
There have been some criticisms of you as a commissioner and also tied to your work as a mediator, which we talked about before. Sure. Just wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of those criticisms. And I think there was maybe an ethics complaint surrounding that.
Yes.
So
absolutely. So in December of last year, an ethics complaint was filed against me, alleging that I was getting paid county funds to do mediation work. And those are county funds that allegedly I budget and approve as part of the county budget process. Each judicial circuit can create a alternative dispute resolution fund. And that alternative dispute resolution fund, it's paid for by filing fees in civil cases. So when you go and file a civil case, you have to pay a certain amount of money to file that case. A portion of that can be diverted to the ADR account, the alternative dispute resolution account, but it's for the entire judicial circuit. The amount is by statute, by law, is up to $10 per civil filing. The amount is set by the Superior Court judge, the chief judge of that circuit. So in the Piedmont Judicial Circuit, it would be the Chief Superior Court Judge of the Piedmont Judicial Circuit who sets that amount. I have no involvement in setting those amounts at all. That ADR fund is used to pay mediators in magistrate court. And then in cases in state or superior court or probate court where they're ordered to mediation and you have a party that is indigent and can't afford to pay for the mediation, they can apply to have the ADR funds cover it. But we have no oversight of that. And in fact, as part of my response to the ethics complaint, I had a affidavit from the county auditors that stated the county does not budget the funds in the ADR account. The Board of Commissioners have no oversight of that account. And in fact, that account had not been included in the county audit. So it was not a county fund at all. Like I said, I have no oversight of that. I have to be licensed through the Georgia Office of Dispute Resolution, which is a statewide office. The funds are approved by the Piedmont Judicial Circuit Court ADR administrator, who works directly for the Superior Court judges. So there's just there's no there. And so the ethics board, after a thorough review, and I appreciate the work that they did to make sure that they reviewed everything, they determined that I had not done anything that violated the ethics ordinances, and they dismissed the complaint.
So maybe you didn't violate any ethics ordinances, but you're clearly getting rich off this mediation work that you're doing, right?
So for magistrate mediation, it's $125 per mediation. Some of those mediations will run an hour and a half, 2 hours, and the average hourly rate for an attorney in this area is maybe $250 an hour on the low end.
Yeah.
So mediators in magistrate court are not mediating those cases to get rich. It's truly an exercise in helping the legal process move forward and trying to help parties find a resolution in a court that you've already got folks coming in and trying to represent themselves by and large.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
What is your platform currently? I know that you've got 2 opponents. How do you set yourself apart going into this primary?
So the 2 biggest things for me, I think, are, it's really easy to say what I'm going to do. A lot of folks can say, hey, here's what I plan to do as a commissioner. I've got the track record. I said from the very beginning that I was going to make myself as accessible as possible, and I've proven that I'm as accessible as possible. I'm on social media. I'm available on my cell phone. I'm available by email. So, that's one of the first things, is that you can say all day long what you're going to do, but I've already got the track record to prove that I will do what I say I'm going to do. The other really big one for me is I've proven my support of law enforcement and first responders in Barrow County. When I first, I did a ride-along in March before I got elected. On that ride-along, I did a ride-along on the night shift. We had 4 deputies covering the entire county. Shortly after I got elected, we went right into budget season to approve the FY 2023 budget starting July 1st of 2022. That budget included a wage and market study for the sheriff's office that I very vocally supported and made sure we got pushed forward. Once that got approved, I did a ride-along almost exactly a year later on that same shift. They had 8 deputies working that shift, up from 4.
Nice.
And so you were able to, and in fact, that night that I rode along that following week, we had a major house fire that involved 3 fatalities. You had to have deputies blocking off both sides of the street. You had to have deputies helping to control the scene. And a year prior, we would have been out of deputies. We still had deputies out patrolling, even with the number of deputies that had to be there at that fire scene. So, that's been one of the biggest things, is that, everybody again says, well, I'll support law enforcement. I'll support our first responders. I've proven that by action. And that's something that I stand behind and will continue to do.
Have you seen any statistical difference between, when you started and today as far as crime in Barrow County?
So our crime rate hasn't changed. Sometimes it feels like it. Obviously, the more folks you have, you might see an uptick.
Sure.
In raw numbers. But I don't think we have had a uptick in the rate. We've been pushing forward a lot of technology that has helped. We now have a real-time crime center that just got approved in the most recent budget. And that real-time crime center has already proven its worth. We had just earlier this week, there was an oil leak out of a box truck. It turned out it was a recycling company that had picked up motor oil. They have giant 300-gallon totes on their trucks. It got punctured and was leaking motor oil. It leaked motor oil for 8 miles.
Accidents?
It did cause one accident actually in Auburn. The roads became very slick. It was 8 miles all the way from Bankhead Highway to Carl Cedar Hill Road, all the way down Atlanta Highway. So when 911 was getting the calls about it, they went up, they set up the emergency operations center. The fire department worked alongside them. We thought it actually came from one of our large industrial companies first. So they were reaching out to that industrial company. They knew from the 911 calls that the vehicle that was leaking was a giant yellow box truck. So they reached out to the real-time crime center. The real-time crime center, once they knew, based on the 911 calls, the exact time that somebody saw it and the intersection that they saw that truck at, the real-time crime center was immediately able to find exactly which vehicle it was, the license plate number, the truck number, and Gwinnett County PD, using their technology, was able to find the vehicle, pull them over, and find out exactly what it was that was leaking, what would need to be done to get cleanup done. We had our roads and bridges department was putting sand down in all the areas of the unincorporated area. Auburn's Public Works was doing the same in their area. Then a private company came in and was continuing to do additional mitigation work and cleanup. And that is all from having those resources in place that supports our sheriff's office, our fire department, our public works department, having all those resources in place and making sure that as Barrow County continues to grow, we continue to support those functions. It just helps to speed up the time and the process of responding to instances that don't even seem like initially a law enforcement type response, but having them still coming in and being involved in that.
Well, that's sort of an insane story.
It absolutely is. It was it was one of those things that it's like, what else could we possibly have happen here?
Yeah.
So.
In an instance like that, which I never thought of something like that happening before, but can the county recoup any of the resources that they expended from the company that
most likely? And it all depends on how much of that was truly negligence versus just an accident, right? And but yeah, that's something that would be looked at. There, like I said, there was a private company that ended up coming in and helping with the additional cleanup process after the fact. So those types of companies do carry insurance to help when they have an incident, even if it's not their fault or intentional or negligence. It's just an accident. So there's insurance in place for things like that, but we'll always look at trying to recoup the costs that the county expends.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I see that you're wearing the heart for Appalachia.
Yes.
The school shooting happened approximately a year ago.
A year and a half ago
now. And I think, if I remember correctly, that the father of the shooter was just convicted. What are your thoughts on that? And how's the county responded to that tragedy?
So I want to start with the response first. I'd said in 22 that I thought we had the best law enforcement agency, the best sheriff's office in the state, thought we had the best fire department in the state. And September 4th proved that. And, we had, so we are, to our knowledge, the first school shooting that had 0 preventable deaths. Everybody who could be saved was saved.
Wow.
We used what's called a rescue task force model. To our knowledge, we're the first ones that actually used this in a real incident. And basically, the way the rescue task force model works is that our medics on the fire trucks and on the med units, they have full body armor, full vests, the Kevlar helmets. Theirs are in red so that they can be distinguished from law enforcement. But when our battalion chief was the first fire official on scene, he immediately set up incident command, and our truck 7 was the first fire apparatus there. As soon as they pulled up, our battalion chief told them grab some deputies. You guys are Rescue Task Force 1. You're going in. And so the first deputy that they saw was actually the sheriff. And one of the firefighters that was on that truck has known the sheriff for about 20 years. And he said, "Are you our security?" "Yep, let's go." And they grabbed a school resource officer who had been at that school the previous year, was at another school, had already made it to Appalachia. And so they were going into the building while it's still an active scene. Before everything's been secured, they thought that there might still potentially be a second shooter. Yeah. They didn't know at that point. They're still going in. They had no idea at that point. They're still going into that building to start grabbing victims and getting them out and getting them to help. We have a organization in Barrow County, a nonprofit called Ministry Village that provides counseling service. The executive director of Ministry Village is our retired fire PIO. And he was a captain for the fire department. Our fire chief immediately reached out to him. So they started bringing their resources same day on scene for the first responders, for the teachers, for the administration. That group was approached by a federal group that works on a federal grant after a school shooting to create recovery and resiliency centers. And so Ministry Village has helped to stand up a resiliency center in Barrow County. So from a response, the community truly came together, has stood up and supported each other. We now have that resiliency center operational to help continue to provide support for the recovery. One of the things that you saw in the news was not so much about all the failures. What we saw in the news consistently across the country was how strong Barrow County community was and how much the community came together, and we continue to come together. As far as answering your question on the actual case, I think that in this particular instance, there's a lot of folks who have said, well, he's the dad's being convicted for the actions of his son. The dad was not convicted for the actions of his son. Right. If anybody who watched the trial would know that there were plenty of warning signs that the dad willfully ignored and still allowed unfettered access to the firearm. And in fact, when the dad took the stand, his defense team called him as their only witness, which opened up the door to him being cross-examined by our district attorney. Our district attorney ended his cross-exam by holding up a gun lock that came with the rifle for free, as every new firearm purchase does, that was still in the bag. And it was in the closet where the rifle was being kept. And the DA got him to admit that was the gun lock that came with the rifle and that it had not been used. And he basically dropped it on the podium to make a point. The assistant district attorney, the chief assistant district attorney, in her closing closed with the exact same point on that gun lock. And so it just highlighted that he was not being charged and ultimately found guilty for the actions of his son. He was being charged and found guilty for his own actions. In this case, it all stemmed from negligence, essentially.
Yeah. A simple fix of using the lock that came with your firearm.
Yes.
Probably would have taken him 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And, my analogy that I've used is if you provide somebody who's 19 with alcohol, they come to your house and you furnish them with alcohol, they're an adult. They go out and drive drunk and get into an accident and hurt, injure, or kill someone, they're going to get charged with vehicular homicide. They're going to get hit with all their own charges. But you're still going to get charged with involuntary manslaughter or what have you for your actions of providing that person with alcohol who you knew shouldn't or reasonably knew shouldn't be provided that alcohol. Yeah. And I believe it's the same in this case, that the dad knew or reasonably should have known that he needed to take just basic preventative steps to keep his son from possessing firearms.
Yeah. Well, it was a terrible tragedy, but the way Barrow County handled it, I don't think they could have done any better.
We really couldn't have the number of fire departments across the country that reached out to us for white papers on rescue task forces in the wake of that. And just to the credit to the deputies, the SROs that were in the building that day, 41 seconds from the time the first shot was fired.
Jeez.
41 seconds.
That's fast.
Yeah. And they did not hesitate. We saw in countless other shootings across this country where law enforcement hesitated and waited. Right. Ours did not. Ours ran directly to the fire.
Yeah. What are some other hot button issues in Barrow County? I'm in Jackson County. We're just down the road. But I know that, it's also a growing community. We touched on the growth a little bit. What are some other big things, big issues that are popping up?
Certainly with growth comes the concerns with infrastructure. On water and sewer infrastructure, before they can actually even go through rezone, they have to have a water sewer availability letter. So the water and sewer infrastructure is already there before the growth can actually happen, and you can plan that out. Roads are a different animal. Roads, in most cases, it's not if you build it, they will come. You have to have the traffic pattern studies to show what's needed, and that usually means you have to wait for the congestion, unfortunately. That being said, the voters of Barrow County approved in 2024 a T-SPLOST referendum. So we're using that money first we used it to get significantly caught up on repaving. And now we're shifting gears to longer term intersection improvements, capacity improvement projects using that T-SPLOST money. And just to give you an idea of the scale and how much T-SPLOST is able to help, Barrow County was averaging about 7 to 10 miles of repaving a year. So in 2024, Barrow County repaved about 7 to 8 miles of roads. In 2025, with T-SPLOST money, Barrow County repaved closer to 35 miles of roads.
Wow.
So almost fivefold increase. So what T-SPLOST does is, first, about 36% comes from folks who aren't even in Barrow County, that are using the roads in Barrow County, shopping in Barrow County. So they're helping to fund that, but it provides more funding that allows us to move projects forward quicker. It also, Barrow County has a lot of state routes cutting through it. And so those are generally in the purview of GDOT, even when there's capacity needs or safety improvement needs that are needed on those. But with T-SPLOST in place, the county is able to provide some matching dollars to GDOT to help move some of those projects along and help prioritize some of our projects, because they'll have the funding. Whereas that's usually one of the biggest reasons that GDOT projects can sometimes feel like they're taking forever, is because they're having to spread money around the entire state, and that resource is finite. We're able to provide some additional funding. We can move GDOT projects forward a little bit faster.
I know there's a lot of criticism around T-SPLOST every time it comes up on the ballot, and different things. A lot of people don't want their taxes raised anymore, don't want an additional penny tax or, this or that. What do you say to those people, and how, I think a lot of the criticism is the county has enough of a tax base, they should be able to better manage their funds instead of adding another tax. What do you say to that criticism?
Certainly. So one of the things I would first point out is that, Barrow County has one of the lowest county M&O taxes in the entire state.
What's M&O?
County M&O is maintenance and operations. So that's your general county fund. Unfortunately, we don't control things like the school taxes, even though they're on the same property tax bill. We don't control those. But what we do control is that county M&O tax. And we have done the revenue neutral rollback every year. So on average, you shouldn't see an increase on the county M&O tax if you're doing that revenue neutral rollback. We did actually pull out, because our general fund did include some money for some road projects. With the passage of T-SPLOST, we've pulled that out. And so, the homeowners, the property owners in Barrow County, they're not paying for those road projects anymore out of their property taxes. What I say is, as a fiscal conservative, I have always been a huge proponent of the fair tax. That probably goes back to my days of listening to Neil Bortz. And with the fair tax, it is a fully consumption-based tax. T-SPLOST is a consumption-based sales tax. If you don't want to pay into the Barrow County's T-SPLOST, you can shop. If you shop in another county, you don't pay into it. But I feel it provides a much more level playing field because the burden is not solely borne by those who own property. The other issue is when for rental properties, specifically large commercial where apartments, even some of the build to rent communities, they're taxed based on it being a commercial aspect. And what would the commercial value be if that was sold to another company that was going to become the landlord, the operator of that apartment complex, for lack of a better phrase. And so they're not, if you actually break it down per unit, their cost, their tax digest is lower than a single family house. Now, they don't get the benefit of homestead exemption like a individual homeowner gets, but they're still using a lot of the same resources. With a T-SPLOST, the people who are using those resources, who live in those apartments, who live in those built-to-rent townhomes, they're driving on the roads, they're buying stuff in the county, they're paying into the T-SPLOST for the roads that they're also using. And so I feel it creates a much more level playing field for everybody.
Is there anything else that you want to tell the voters of Barrow County before the primary day?
I think one of the two big takeaways for folks is, first, keeping in mind that each individual commissioner is only one vote on a 7-member board. There's very little that I can do directly on my own as far as passing policy. So it's a question of who's advocating for you and what are they doing to help you. I think that the number one thing that I am able to do on my own is what they call the state and federal level constituent services. How am I able to communicate and be accessible and provide answers and responses to folks? So that's the first thing that I would say. And then, the second thing is, in most cases, when you see something that you don't like happening in the county, tell us, but don't just say don't do something. Tell us what the specific concern is, so that where we can't just say no to something, it makes it a lot easier for us to say yes, but, because we're able to know what the very specific concerns are and help try to address those and try to fix those as best as possible.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, what are, we talked about some of the roads and the potholes. What are some other complaints that you hear people calling you or asking you to help fix?
The potholes are probably the biggest one. The other one is, is anything that deals with code enforcement type issues. That, hey,
my neighbor's grass is too long.
Well, it's more the junk cars. It's more the junk boats in some cases. Some cases where someone's doing heavy commercial truck repairs in a residential neighborhood. And, hey, who do I need to reach out to on that? Or, I'm not, why is this being allowed? In Barrow County, we have responsive code enforcement. They don't drive around measuring people's grass, looking for stuff. They're waiting for people to file a complaint. And so, but making sure that folks know how to get that. So that's one of the ones that I get is, hey, this is going on. I don't know who to talk to. Here's who to reach out to. Or they'll reach out and, hey, I haven't heard any follow-up. And that's where, reach back out to me. I'll go and start talking to the county manager and they will take a look at it and follow up on it. And that usually helps get some resolution for folks.
If people want to reach out to you to work with your law firm, how can they get in touch?
Sure. Best way is either through my website, awardlaw.net, or they can reach out to me on my cell phone, 678-557-4538, which is also the same cell phone number that I use as a county commissioner. I don't like the whole 2, 3, 4 cell phone thing. So just reach out to me. Just if I don't answer, I might just be on with somebody else. So leave me a message and I'll follow back up.
Yeah. I'm the same. I like my cell phones like I like my women, just one at a time.
Yep. I did the 2 cell phone thing before with a different company, and it was challenging. Where do I keep this one and that one? And I don't have enough belt loops and pockets and clips and whatnot. So,
oh yeah, don't get me wrong. When they get old enough, I'll trade them in for a new one. But
yes,
yeah. The phones,
yes, the phones.
How can people find out a little bit more about your campaign?
So the campaign, so both for campaign and county commission, I'm all over social media. My campaign website is wardforbarrow.com. On both Facebook and Instagram, my campaign is Ward for Barrow. My commissioner is A Ward Barrow, but you can just do a search for Alex Ward Barrow Commissioner. And find my accounts on my commissioner ones. I'm constantly posting about what's going on in Barrow County. The campaign one is obviously a little bit more campaign driven.
Cool. Anything else that you want to tell the listeners, the viewers, or the Russian or Chinese bots that are watching this episode?
The Russian or Chinese bots, please stop sending spy balloons. I'd appreciate that. But no, for anybody, especially business owners, small business owners, anybody that's looking to start a business, reach out on the front end. Yes, you're going to spend a little bit of money, but I can guarantee you the rates you're going to pay for me to help you get you going on the front end is going to be a whole lot less than if you find yourself dealing with litigation. On the election side, on the campaign side, on the county commissioner side. If you live in Barrow County, even if I'm not your commissioner, if you're not getting a resolution, if you got questions on stuff, reach out to me. I'm here to help. I love Barrow County. It's not where I grew up, but it is my home, and I'm passionate about doing everything we can to make Barrow County the best place to live.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. Alex Ward, A Ward Law, and also running for county commissioner.
Thank you.
Election.
Appreciate it. Thank you.